What if one of World War II's greatest armies never existed? Imagine a battlefield where victory wasn't decided by guns or tanks, but by art, sound, and deception. This is the story of the Ghost Army, a unit so extraordinary that its existence was classified for over 50 years. Their mission was simple, yet audacious: create an army out of nothing and use it to outsmart the enemy. By the summer of 1944, the Allies were in a deadly struggle with the German war machine. Overmatched in some areas, they needed a way to outthink the enemy, not just outfight them. Enter the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, a unit of 1,100 men tasked with fooling the Germans. They were artists, designers, sound engineers, and actors. Their tools: inflatable tanks, fake radio transmissions, and loudspeakers blasting the sounds of an army that wasn't there. The stakes were monumental. If the Ghost Army's ruse failed, Allied troops could suffer devastating losses too. But if it succeeded, it would save thousands of lives and tilt the war in the Allies' favor. This wasn't just a clever ploy. It was a testament to the power of imagination in the face of impossible odds. The Ghost Army was born from necessity and ingenuity. Inspired by British deception tactics in North Africa, where fake tank tracks and dummy vehicles had misled German forces, the U.S. Army decided to take this concept further. In early 1944, they formed the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, a unit with a singular mission to weaponize illusion. This wasn't a conventional military unit. Among its ranks were painters, sculptors, and fashion designers, individuals recruited not for combat but for their creativity. Bill Blass, who would later become a world-renowned fashion designer, was one of them. So was Ellsworth Kelly, destined to become a celebrated artist. These men weren't trained for the battlefield, they were trained to make the battlefield itself a stage for deception. The unit combined visual, auditory, and communication tactics into a seamless strategy. Inflatable tanks, painted with painstaking detail, mimicked the real thing from above. Sound engineers used massive speakers to broadcast recordings of troop movements and heavy machinery. Meanwhile, skilled radio operators transmitted fake communications designed to mislead German intelligence. Together, these elements created a tapestry of illusion that convinced the Germans they were facing forces that didn't exist. This was more than technical trickery, it was psychological warfare. By feeding the Germans exactly what they expected to see and hear, the Ghost Army exploited cognitive biases and planted seeds of doubt. Their formation marked a turning point in modern warfare where perception became as powerful as firepower. The Ghost Army's weapons were unlike any the world had seen. Inflatable tanks and vehicles were at the heart of their deception. Crafted from rubberized canvas, these life-sized replicas were painted to appear authentic to aerial reconnaissance. With tracks etched into the dirt to match their placement, they created the illusion of a fully operational armored division. Sound was another critical element. Using state-of-the-art speakers mounted on half-tracks, they broadcast pre-recorded audio of tanks moving, soldiers marching, and even bridge construction. These recordings, layered with precision, were synchronized with the fake visuals to complete the illusion. For instance, the sound of advancing vehicles would gradually grow louder as if they were approaching a real location. The precision of these soundscapes made them eerily convincing. Radio deception added yet another layer. Operators, trained to mimic the communication styles of actual Allied divisions, filled the airwaves with transmissions that German intelligence couldn't ignore. They wove narratives of troop movements, supply chains, and impending attacks, all designed to mislead and confuse. These fake communications were so effective that they often dictated German troop movements. But the brilliance of the Ghost Army wasn't just in the tools they used. It was in their execution. Every detail was accounted for, from realistic tire tracks to campfires at dummy encampments. They often operated within earshot of the enemy, knowing that discovery could mean certain death. Yet their meticulous attention to detail ensured their illusions held up under scrutiny, turning deception into one of the Allies' most powerful weapons. The Ghost Army's brilliance was put to the test in some of World War II's most critical moments. One of their most remarkable achievements was Operation Fortitude, a deception plan pivotal to the success of the D-Day invasion. The Allies needed the Germans to believe the invasion would strike Calais, not Normandy. The Ghost Army created the illusion of a massive force. the fictitious 1st WWII Army Group stationed in southeastern England. Inflatable tanks lined the fields, sound engineers broadcast the hum of activity, and radio operators filled the airwaves with chatter about troop movements. Even leaks of fake intelligence were planted for German spies. The deception was so convincing that German commanders fortified Calais, leaving Normandy vulnerable. When the real invasion began, the Germans were caught unprepared, buying precious time for the Allies. Operation Fortitude wasn't just a strategic success. It was a masterpiece of deception that saved countless lives. Another triumph came during Operation Viersen in March 1945. As Allied forces prepared to cross the Rhine River, the Ghost Army staged a diversion. Inflatable vehicles, booming soundscapes, and fake radio transmissions created the illusion of a major crossing miles from the real one. The Germans, convinced by the elaborate ruse, diverted their forces, allowing the Allies to cross the Rhine with minimal resistance. This maneuver accelerated the Allied advance into Germany and hastened the end of the war. These operations weren't just clever, they were transformative. By manipulating German perceptions, the Ghost Army altered the course of battles without firing a shot. Their ability to execute these deceptions under the constant threat of discovery speaks to their skill and courage. They turned the battlefield into a stage and played their roles to perfection. The Ghost Army's true power lay not in its inflatable tanks or booming speakers, but in its ability to manipulate fear. Their illusions weren't just distractions, they were psychological traps that exploited the enemy's own expectations. Imagine being a German commander in 1944. Your scouts report a massive Allied force preparing to attack. The aerial reconnaissance photos confirm the sight of tanks and artillery. Radio transmissions buzz with orders and movements, and everything points to an impending assault. Yet when you mobilize your forces, there's nothing, just empty fields. The Ghost Army had struck again, and the doubts they planted lingered long after the illusion disappeared. This was the genius of the Ghost Army. By feeding the Germans what they expected to see, they exploited cognitive biases, making their deceptions all the more believable. Every false tank, every fake radio call created uncertainty and hesitation. German commanders began second-guessing their intelligence, slowing their decision-making at critical moments. In war, hesitation can be fatal, and the Ghost Army turned this to their advantage. Their impact wasn't limited to the enemy. For Allied troops, the knowledge that such innovative tactics were being used to protect them boosted morale. The Ghost Army wasn't just saving lives, they were inspiring confidence, showing the Allies weren't just fighting harder but fighting smarter. This psychological warfare redefined the battlefield. By controlling what the enemy believed, the Ghost Army controlled how the enemy acted. They demonstrated that in the fog of war, perception is often more powerful than reality. Their work wasn't just tactical, it was transformative, proving that the mind can be the most decisive weapon of all. The story of the Ghost Army remained classified for decades, hidden even from many of the soldiers they protected. It wasn't until the 1990s that their work was declassified, and in 2022 the surviving members received the Congressional Gold Medal, one of the highest honors in the United States. This recognition came too late for many, but it cemented their place in history as pioneers of modern warfare. Their tactics of deception laid the groundwork for psychological operations that continue to shape military strategies today. The principles they perfected, manipulating sight, sound, and communication, have evolved into modern tools like cyber warfare, disinformation campaigns, and even digital propaganda. While their inflatable tanks and booming speakers may seem like relics of a simpler time, the Ghost Army's core lesson remains relevant. Controlling perception can often mean controlling the outcome. But their story also raises questions. During the war, their tactics saved lives. But in the modern age, the use of deception in non-military contexts, like politics and media, has become a double-edged sword. The ethical implications of manipulating perception, even for strategic purposes, are a legacy as complex as their success. At its heart, the Ghost Army's story is one of ingenuity. In a world that often values brute strength, they proved that imagination could be just as powerful. Their work wasn't just deception. It was artistry, courage, and a testament to the boundless creativity of the human mind. They remind us that even in the darkest of times, brilliance can light the way to victory.